We're not just here to make quick money, set the company and exit. Matter of fact, we had an $18 million acquisition at Pay Cruiser, which we declined because of reasons like this. It's more about the purpose, right? It's up to you to decide whether you want to stay in the comfort zone or you want to explore the world.
Welcome to How to Help a Few Billion People, a podcast where we feature entrepreneurs who set out to literally help billions of people through their core business. On today's episode, we're going to talk to Ousmane, the founder of WODI Money. WODI has a vision of being able to help over 1 billion people around the world become banked. That currently means that they're unbanked. And what do we mean by unbanked? Well, that means that they take money as they earn it and they put that maybe into a mattress or into a safe or into something that's not really connected to the formal economy. So just play that forward. Like, what happens if you don't have a bank? Well, depending where you live in the world, it actually makes a lot of day-to-day work harder. If you have to pay bills and that money is in physical form, not digital form, there are some shops that won't even take your money. Or if you need to be able to take out a loan, whether that's a small home repair to an even bigger car or home purchase, if you don't have that money in a formal system, there's no history of your credit. So whether it's for day-to-day ease of life, whether it's for the safety and security of your funds, or whether it's for long-term, the ability to take loans and actually build wealth, being unbanked severely limits you. Now, there's another problem, and Ousmane will share this in the podcast, where when all this money is actually sitting in mattresses or coffee cans or safes, it's not part of the formal economy. And other researchers, Ousmane included, have discovered that lack of money in the formal economy is leading to inflation because money is being created and distributed and being in the economy, and then it's ending in banks, it's creating interest. But if it ends up tucked away in these informal instruments, the institutions responsible for printing money have to print more money because that money has kind of fallen out of the system. And so that actually creates inflation. So not only is life harder for all of those that are unbanked, but it actually creates inflationary effects for everybody that is banked. So Ousmane's setting out to change that. And he's doing that with a very innovative approach that he knows about because of where he comes from. Ousmane grew up in a household in Guinea with a single mother working every day, 16 hours jobs, and tucking money away in her own mattress. Ousmane, through a huge sacrifices made by his own mother, ended up at a school in France, and then from there, a Google Scholars program for their higher education, from there, a job at Boeing, from there, starting his own venture, which has gone through some pretty big pivots 3 times, each time actually retaining the organization from before, but creating a bigger and bigger entity with a more and more audacious vision. Right now, WODI Money is used in over 50 countries. They are unbanking millions, they are moving millions of people that are unbanked into formal banking operations. And they're doing that in ways that are also turning small corner shops, especially in areas where there are no formal banking infrastructures. They're turning small shops, small bakeries, small grocery stores into banks. And they're using that with their fintech platform and actually something more important, which is trust. So in the show today, we're going to talk about how did Ousmane decide to start this crazy adventure, especially coming from this really fascinating story of living in poverty to then living in a very, very high earning Western American lifestyle. How did he decide to risk it all to start his first venture? Why did that first venture decide to empower individuals who had no access to banking infrastructure starting in Africa? How the things that he learned in Africa are now enabling him to come into more Western financial systems and drive massive innovation, so much so that he's able to call some of the biggest and most successful banking and fintech organizations, including Visa, his clients. So we're going to uncover all of this. And along the way, we're going to talk about the importance of humanity, of integrity, and morals as we're leading and growing a purpose-driven business. And one quick thing, I almost forgot. In the preamble to every episode, I like to make 2 asks. One is, help us help you. If there are questions that you have about our entrepreneurs, if there are things that you wish we would ask our entrepreneurs that would make you more effective, please let us know. You can drop me an email at any time at markethelpinbillions.org. You can leave us a comment. And one other thing that we would just really, really appreciate is if you're able to leave us a review. Anytime you leave us a review, you follow us, you like us, you add a comment, it actually helps us get discovered by other people with similar interests. And that discovery not only helps promote this message of building businesses that prioritize purpose over profits, but it also really helps our guests be discovered by even more. So if you have a moment, ask us a question, give us guidance. How can we be more helpful? And if you have 2 moments, really appreciate it if you would leave us a review. It helps our entrepreneurs get even more attention and awareness over the incredible work that they're doing. So without further ado, I can't wait to introduce you to Ousmane from WODI Money. Ousmane, I am so excited that you have taken the time to join us on the show today. Welcome to the How to Help a Few Billion People podcast.
Thank you, Mark. I really enjoy being here, and I like what you're doing with the podcast. So it's an honor for me to be here.
Well, a very well-deserved honor. And Ousmane, I want to just jump into your personal story here. I think it's really going to help set the stage for the incredible work that you're doing. We got to know each other via the Moving Worlds platform, where you were one of our featured entrepreneurs that we were highlighting in a really cool workshop. And in there, you told us a story how when you were growing up, you remember that banking for your mother was in the mattress. And you went on to quote some pretty incredible research that not only is that not safe, but it has bigger economic implications that actually impact billions of people. Hence why I think you're an incredible guest for the show. Tell us a little bit more. First, bring us back just to what do you remember from your childhood that has you set out on this mission to, as your shirt says, right, bank the unbanked?
Yes, I mean, I still remember as if it was yesterday. Growing up, single family home, my mom, she used to work 15, 16 hours a day, 7 days a week. And when she get back home, there was a ritual that she would do every day. She would take the knife, cut a hole in a random place in the mattress, and pile cash in. And growing up, I know something was wrong. I did not understand why my mom would do that. And one way to put it was the mattress was the safest place for her at that time because that's where we were sleeping. And if we get robbed, it's very unlikely that they spend time going through the mattress to find the money. That was the whole point about mattress banking. And I know something was completely wrong. But the funny part is, as I grew up, fast forward more than 20 years ago, more than 20 years later, I realized mattress banking is still the most common way of banking in my home country, Guinea. And as we expand that, we will have the time to talk about that. But there's a different kind of mattress banking that I witnessed here in the United States, the largest economy that the world has ever known. And I can't wait to tell you more about that.
I can't wait to hear it. So maybe just bring us through your own personal life a little bit. So your mom is what an incredible person, right? Working so hard, providing for you, for family. How do you end up going from Guinea to, now in the US, researching and building this business?
Yeah. So growing up, I was always good at math and science. I think it's something natural to me. And in Guinea, more than 90% of the population is unbanked. An unbanked person is someone who doesn't have a bank account, does not does not trust the banking system in place, or it's just not practical for that person to get to the nearest bank. Maybe the nearest bank is 2 cities away, 6 hours away. So those are people we call unbanked, not necessarily person without bank account. And when you are unbanked, you are locked out of so many opportunities. I can't even begin to tell you all these opportunities. So me being very good at math and science, my mom thought that it would be better for me to seek better future outside of Guinea, which is how she ended up taking a loan to get my plane ticket to France, where I lived with a foster family, a French family there, and completed my high school with flying colors, my university in computer science, and moved to the United States. That was, I think, back around 2010 when I moved to the US for a small contract. I opened my first company in France. And as I was in the US, I applied for a Google scholarship. And then I went back to France because I was here for only 3 months. Few weeks after my return to France, I received an email where you've been admitted into the Google program, choose a university in America to study computer science. Then I decided to set the company and use those proceeds along with the scholarship I was getting from Google to further my education in the United States. And that's how my journey in America started.
And tell me more about the education, right? So obviously math and science was a big part of the background for you, but yeah, where did you decide to go? What type of education we're pursuing? And then what eventually really led you into technology here?
Yes, this is a story that will always make me laugh. Here's why. So in Africa, we live in big families. Sometimes you hear me say my sister, my uncle, but maybe they're not really blood related. So along those lines, a brother-in-law of mine, of a big sister of mine, from the wider family, he watched me growing up, and he told me I always wanted to be a doctor. And he was always making fun of me. He was always telling me, "You would be the worst doctor ever because you are the clumsiest person I know. You will end up killing so many people." Right? So, I mean, that got into me, right? And then that's why I said, okay, what profession can I do where I can just erase a mistake that I've done? Turns out computer science is the best profession for that. You can just, previous, control C, control V, erase, delete, repeat, right? And that's how I got into computer science. And being good at math and science helps a lot with programming and computer science. And since I discovered it, it's just second nature to me. And that's kind of how I got into this field.
Well, and you didn't just get into computer science, but you also got into like California entrepreneurship, right? Like, so
Yeah.
talk me through because WODI is not your first enterprise, right? You actually, built and exited a previous organization also related to this kind of
Yeah.
idea of mobile money. And so talk me through how, um, you've already taken some big risks in life, right? You went from Guinea to France, you went from France to the US, you went back to France, you came back for education, and then you decided to take this other big risk without a backdrop, which was entrepreneurship. What sparked you to try and build your first company? And yeah, tell me a little bit more. Tell me a little bit more about the insight that you had. Why did you take the risk, and ultimately, what did you build with PayCruiser?
That was definitely one of the biggest risks I have taken in my life. And the reason it's because once I graduated with my computer science degree, summa cum laude, I obviously was in an interview process with Google, but right away I got a very good couchy job at the Boeing company, working with the leadership at Boeing. It was an exciting job where every 3 months I would work with a different executive leader at the company to learn about different things. So I worked for the defense space, I worked on the Apache helicopters, I worked on solutions built for Air Force One. It was, I'd say, a dream job for me. And in 2016, I just felt there is so much more I can give to the world. Right? The couch was not enough. And the reason is when you grow up in a poverty stricken nation where everybody around you is struggling to survive, you have a different mindset about money. And it could go both ways, right? You could be all about money or you could be all about purpose. And I'm very lucky I went all into purpose. and not
Yeah.
only look at the. At Boeing, I had vacations. I won't tell you how many. It's the best health insurance in the world. When you go to the to the hospital, you have literally a suite. It was a very couchy job. I had a beach house in California with infinite view, beautiful wife, beautiful family, beautiful cars. Everything was set. But I just felt like it was not, there was more that I could give to the world. So I took on that very big risk to leave this couch job and go on my venture full time. And you can imagine, I mean, you probably know this better than me, that from 100 to minus 100, it's a big shift, right? You're talking about the family not understanding. You're not longer able to take family to these vacations every 6 weeks. You have to be more lean, more stringent. A lot of things like you have to literally reinvent yourself. And for
Yeah.
me, I would do it over and over again because I think it was the biggest risk, but also I think the biggest move professionally I could have ever done.
Yeah. So one of my really good friends, also entrepreneur, his name is Prem Kumar. He started an organization called Humanly. And I remember this conversation. He was fast track, high performer, Microsoft, go like grow, 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 grow every year, felt like a promote, like, and he had kids. And he said, for me, and for my kids, the role model that I want to set is not this like safe corporate career path. I always dreamed of being an entrepreneur ever since college. I'd even like side hustled here and there, like I'd even tried, leaving Microsoft and going into a startup, but ultimately I always dreamt of being an entrepreneur and I'm not pursuing it. And now that I have a kid, I need to role model that. So actually, at the most risky time in life, he then embarked on his most risky venture.
Wow.
Anyway, it seems like you did something kind of similar, and I'm just curious, like for you, like what was that pull? Like you had family, you have other people that are relying on you. What what got you to this point of, hey, this is comfortable? I could always just donate, right? I could always just be philanthropic, right? And but like why take that leap into entrepreneurship to solve this money problem?
Yes. I mean, it goes back to my upbringings, but most importantly, looking back, I think it's something that you just have in you. I call it the voice, right? It's just this voice in you that's telling you, yes, but there is so much more. Yes, but there is so much more. Now, it's up to you to decide whether you want to stay in the comfort zone or you want to explore the world. My compass or my north pole is my north star is. At the end of the day, we were born naked. We will all die naked. So it doesn't matter what's in between. I think that being remembered for something that changed millions, billions of lives is worth a lot more than all the money you can make along the process. That's really what has been driving me. And it doesn't mean it's the best way to go, right? Like you can go for the safety net, safety route, protect your family, and so on and so forth. But again, seeing that there is so much more, I've been lucky to be in this situation from one of the worst economies to the best economies to one of the highest paying jobs in the US. And I felt like there has to be something more than money about this. And that's why I took that
Yeah.
bet and risk.
There is this is a thread across the interviews that we have on the show, right? Is that we all have that voice, right? Or that drive or that thing, but there's like a nurturing of that voice. And the most like effective nurturing or like the theme that I feel like I hear up on is people at some point kind of step back and they establish this vision of like, what is my life going to look like 20, 30, 40, 50 years, right? And there's even like Stephen Covey in his like Habits of Highly Effective People book even talks about that, like what will people say at your funeral, right? So it seems like you did some of that work, you did some of that, and this like grounding of like, this is what it means to be me, Ousmane. And like, I don't just make money, I solve world problems. But you also had to bring your family on board. And this is definitely not like a relationship podcast, but I am curious, like, what was that like at your in your home? Like how did you build up like support from friends and family to like go from this, you know, very lucrative career to this very risky one?
Well, that is one of the that was the most challenging part.
I bet.
And I learned something along the way. What I learned was that you don't really get to know people. First, it takes time to know people. But even with time, you don't really get to know people until you are in a situation where they have zero benefit for backing you. That's why you really get to know people. And that's what I really enjoyed being at your postcard because remember when Lewis connected with me, Lewis one of your team members, and then we joined the podcast for Moving Word. What you doing on Moving Word? You're not doing it for the money or the fame. You know, you could use that time for other things, right? But you have that purpose in mind. And so essentially, you giving a voice to people like me, right, and the other entrepreneurs without expecting anything in return. Now, in the family settings, when you use to a certain level of lifestyle, and then you ask your family to scale down, they can be extremely supportive or not supportive. In my case, it ended up in, I wouldn't say divorce because it was a concubine relationship, but we ended up splitting in my case. So you look at that situation where you build in a company from the ground up, the love of your life decided that rodeo is not longer for her. I mean, it was, you had to be extremely strong mentally to get
Wow.
through this
Yeah.
kind of life, right? And once you get out of that kind of life, I don't think anything else can. I mean, you're not afraid of anything. There's a word in French, a saying in French, is le cabri mort. I think it's an African adage. Le cabri mort n'a pas peur du couteau, meaning that the dead cow is not afraid of knife. It's already dead anyway, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that was kind of that was what I was using to keep
Yeah.
going. And I'm so glad I did that because guess what? I was able to filter out all the noise, all the bad grass in my close circle. And today the people in my circle are people I will bet my life on day in, day out. So
Yeah.
that's something that for me, I didn't know was going to be one of the benefit of entrepreneurship. But for
Yeah.
me, it was the biggest one because right now I have a circle. I know exactly who they are. They know who I am. I can call them at any given time in any situation. We bring through the worst and the best.
Yeah. That's, you know, so many pieces here. That last point about people, the connection, like I have this post that I've like been dreaming of writing, and I haven't gotten there, but it's like, you know, the thing nobody ever told me about entrepreneurship was actually the people components. And there are people, and this might be you very soon here, but it's like there are people where I feel like I've met just like two times at conferences or at events, and in that level, because of the shared entrepreneurial journey, like we've gotten so deep so fast. And I know that only that person and that person alone has like connected with me at a human level and been through these like really high highs, really low lows, the fears, the anxiety in a way that are just so hard to relate to. And you know, even like some of my closest friends, my wife, like even that journey, even as they've been parallel to it, they haven't lived it, and that living aspect is so real. So I hear you, that like that people connection, and once you develop those and you have them on this side, like they are in your corner. But I question for you here. So I remember once getting guidance from somebody that was like, if you're going to go start something, you got to think of like your life as a stool. And so you got to have like three of the four legs still intact, because entrepreneurship is a very wobbly one, right? So like get your personal life in order, right? Get your like financial life in order. Get your but you didn't. Like when you kind of went on this entrepreneurship, you had so much risk. You it seems like in your personal life, this kind of led to a separation. Like, how did you find strength and clarity and like stability during that time? Because just the entrepreneurship turmoil can be, so vast, but you had change in your personal life too. How did you find strength during that time?
I think in meditation, and meditation is one. There are two big pillars. Meditation is one, but the second is the purpose of the mission. I did not just live a couchy life to go build the next app that will help me find the best coffee shop in town. The purpose here, we are talking billions of people at a time globally. It's very rare to be in a situation where you have the opportunity to change billions of lives.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what gave me the strength and the courage to go into this journey. And along the lines, you have to be very frugal, right? You need to know that it's not about how much you make, but how much you save. So find ways you know, to save as much as you can. And that helps you go so far along without having to rely on external sources. And that's the strategy I applied. And I mean, it just today, just I'm using that at scale today.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Wow. It's real also across like guests on this show, like that mental health component, whether it's like, some people get it through cooking, some people get it through focus meditation, some through nature time, some through exercise, but just like having that space, I think, um, is just so critical. And the frugality, it's actually interesting. Like a number of the entrepreneurs have talked about how like in their early years, early professional careers, by just being really like frugal, they knew that their purpose was going to draw them to something, and they were saving very strategically in order to like have that space to take some of these risks. So okay, let's keep going here. So you start your first entrepreneurial adventure, Pay Cruiser. Do you mind, like, can we, like, I really want to talk about WODI Money, but can we talk a little bit about Pay Cruiser? Like, what was the problem that you
Yeah,
set out to solve? Like,
yeah,
yeah, let's start with that.
yeah. And I mean, the problem was when I used to go back in Africa and to visit family. I think it started in 2012. I go there and my sister and I are talking. I'm telling her I want to go to the bank. And she tells me, what bank? I mean, the bank, you will be lucky if you can even have an ATM that works. But we have something called Orange Money. You can go to the grocery store across the house and do whatever you want, get the money and say, Orange Money, what's that? So basically, the people were so in despair that they built out an entire financial system completely parallel from the global financial market as we know, right? We keep calling them the unbanked, but those folks have more bank accounts and more access to money than us here because in Africa, every shop is a bank, literally, right? Sometimes I take a video when I travel and I say, well, this street here has more banks than Times Square, for instance, right?
Amazing.
And maybe one day I will share that. But, but then the problem was it's a siloed financial system. That money only works inside the country. You cannot use that account to purchase something on Amazon or subscribe to Netflix. So there was a big disconnect there. So when I came back to the US, I saw how to build a payment technology that is interoperable. interoperability is a system where it's kind of like, think of it like a plug. When you go to France, you have an adapter that will switch from your US outlet to French outlet, and so on and so forth. So, and the global financial market is lacking that. So that was a big hole in the market that was affecting billions of people. And I thought with Pay Cruiser, I can focus on that specific area. Before that, I was already working on payments with a previous company of mine called ZoomDat, which was a big data real-time search technology. And we were solving the payment challenge there because our clients needed to charge the end users in order for them to access data. So we were using credit card payment there. But then when I discovered the whole mobile money infrastructure, which is the fastest growing payment system in the world today, I thought there needs to be a way to integrate those. And PayCruiser is actually was, because it was acquired by WODI, the world's largest interoperable payment system, meaning that we integrate more than 97% of all the mobile money accounts in the world with the global financial market, so that you just need to have a phone number to be connected into the global financial market.
Oh,
Whether you want to pay somebody in Kenya, in South Africa, in Guinea, or Amazon or Netflix.
yeah. It's I lead a global organization, right? We have staff globally. Um, Still, despite all the fintech evolutions, it is so painful to pay people. And then, like, we do things like customer research surveys and we want to give money to people across over 110 countries. So painful. It's so ridiculous, such high fees. So anyway, I'm like, yes, of course, what you're building. So, okay, but so my mistake here, I jumped the gun on your entrepreneurial journey. I jumped into PayCruiser. There was something in between Boeing and PayCruiser. Is that?
Yes, yes. Originally ZoomDat, and ZoomDat is really the precursor to everything I'm doing now. It was the technology was so advanced so that we had to divide it in multiple companies. PayCruiser is one of them.
Okay,
Yeah.
got you. So, okay, so you leave Boeing, you take your first entrepreneurial steps. And so I think this is interesting. You start a company with like one thesis, right? You start and then it starts to get more complex. And then you kind of spin out PayCruiser, and then PayCruiser then gets acquired by now your next company, WODI. What led you, because the mechanics here of how you've done that are different than other people that I've talked to, but it's kind of like pivot, 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 right? And you've just what led you to kind of go, okay, here's the one problem. Here's a bigger problem. Oh wow, here's a bigger problem. And then you're just like stair stepping up to like the bigger and bigger problem. Like what realizations did you come to in these steps along the journey that helped you say, okay, there's now this bigger problem, bigger opportunity. Let me evolve this company into this next venture to go after that.
Yes, yes. I think it comes down to serving problems at a global scale and not looking at a specific angle. And PayCruiser was more focused on connecting unbanked people with the global economy. For example, we had partnership with the Housing Authority in Senegal, millions of users in Senegal, providing them with interoperability of payment solutions. It didn't really speak to the US market, but and the funny part is that these economies, these low income developing countries, their economies are highly driven by people from the diaspora that live outside. And that's also an invisible economy that people don't even know about yet. And now, when you live, just take your example, Mark. You live in the US and you end up spending some time, let's say, in Egypt or South Africa. You're not going there with new habits. You're going there with your own habits, with your own way of banking. If you need money, you would think ATM, right? It's the same thing when people leave these developing countries, Africa, and come to the US, right? They have a specific way of banking. It's called agency banking. They go to the grocery store to send money to the parents to pay for electricity bills and things like that. And sadly, in America, 25% of the population is in this situation where you can imagine that it's the same as in Africa. They're completely outside of global financial markets, right? So that's why what it came into. What is another evolution where we are solving the problem globally, universally, whether it's in the US or in Africa. This problem is universal. Every shop becomes a bank branch.
Yep. Amazing. I remember being in Nairobi, Kenya I want to say it was 2014, right? So this is like pre-Venmo, right? And I'm watching like transactions happen on old function phones, not even smart, like function phone. Like everybody's got a bank account. And I'm like, we are so old school and backwards in the US. Like this is so much more faster, creative, innovative. Like you have cash, and you like look around the corner and there's like an M-Pesa exchange in a shop, and you can just do it. So so this is so interesting to me. So you're saying there is a bigger problem here. This is not just in some areas where our like we're seeing this in every country. There is a significant portion of the population that is unbanked, and the cost of being banked is too high, whether that's time or financial cost or lack of credit because of any number of rules, of laws, of previous systems, whatever that may be. So you're setting out to solve that with WODI Money. But before we get into some of the specifics of WODI, in our workshop just like a week ago, you started actually sharing some research that says when people are unbanked, that is actually like if there is a small portion of the population that is unbanked, that makes everybody worse off, including the banked, because of inflation. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? How did you come across that, and why do we need to solve for that?
Yes, and that's one of the core topics of my PhD research in AI right now. The key word there is thesaurization of cash. Uh, I spoke about it during the spring meetings at the World Bank because it came with some new formulas to evaluate these kind of things. So think of it this way. For example, at that conference at the World Bank, they were talking about the tap and the water, and the index that they recently invented was to see how open is the tap, because the more the tap is open, it means more opportunities for sovereign countries for investment and so on and so forth, right? Think of a tap of water. The more water you pump into the economy, the more opportunities you bring into the economy. It's the same concept. Now, when people are unbanked, we use the term unbanked in the Western world where we say they don't have bank accounts. But in reality, these folks, they can buy a car, they can buy a house, right? So what do? They use an alternative, cash. So when you are in bank, cash is king. And when cash is king, you basically locking out the flow of money. There is an macroeconomic terms for it, MV equal PQ. That's the formula that is used to evaluate the GDP of economy, right? The money plus the velocity times the velocity equal real economic output, right? Now, when you thesaurize cash, meaning that you're taking cash out of the system, whether by banking in the mattress or any other means, you basically affecting that equation, right? What happened? Things start to become expensive because the business is around. It's hard to move to secret money. So businesses struggle to get paid, right? Employers struggle to get paid. People, you would struggle to pay people, right? Because you have
Yep.
to move physical currencies, fiat
Yeah.
around, a lot of risk. At the end of the day, this is why most economies today are having low GDP, high inflations, and it's still happening today.
Wow. Wow. That's fascinating. Yeah. It's, in all the stories that you hear about, inflation and everything, like it always just assumes that we're in a totally rational economy and people are moving their money into banks and it's getting some interest and still being utilized. And, this is like, I remember in probably 2010, actually, one of the talks that got me on my own journey into social entrepreneurship and impact investing was a talk from the former CFO of the Gates Foundation, who talked about all the different saving instruments, right? And he talked about mattresses, coffee cans in backyards, collective saving groups, right? Usually women like collective groups. And he listed like 10 or 15 of these. And he said the reason there's so many is because none of them work particularly well, right? They don't work particularly well for those individuals. And then they're creating this bigger economic consequence. So here we are. We still haven't solved that 15 years later, although WODI is setting out to solve that. So this is a super long preamble just to get to like, okay, now tell us more about WODI. Make it even more real for us. What are you building and where are you on the journey with WODI?
Yes, and I will use the feedback I received from uh, Alex.
Yes, Alex Galifant are
Right?
the yeah.
I will
So
use
so
that
for
feedback.
listeners here at Moving Worlds, we held a workshop with Alex Galifant, who is former managing director at IDEO, and he was giving storytelling coaching to some of our like entrepreneurs, and Ousmane was one of those entrepreneurs that received this live coaching from Alex. So Alex, shout out to you. We're seeing it in practice. So yes, Ousmane, back to you. Yes.
Yes, I sorry, I can't change my skin, but I try to mimic your actions. So, so the big idea is, again, quoting Alex, the big idea is stores become bank branches. The store owner becomes a bank agent, a bank associate, like Alex points out. And the cash register becomes an ATM machine for cash in, cash out, withdrawal, and deposit. What does that mean practically? Now, with WODI, we have key areas where we're focusing on. Areas with high density of unbanked and underbanked people. Turns out it's very easy to find those areas. Harlem, New York is one of them. The Bronx in New York is a big one. And in these areas, banks don't open. It's too expensive for a bank to operate there. It costs about $2 to $5 million to open a bank branch, and then another $500,000 minimum per year to maintain the bank. And if people are used to operate with the mindset they have coming back from their country, these are areas with high population of diaspora members, Latin, black, and brown communities, right? And a lot of these people are maybe first or second generation immigrants, and they still have the same habits. Back home, people, here in the US, when you go to the store, you buy sugar in packs. Back home, people buy sugars in cubes. I want 3 cubes of sugar. And it's the same concept here, but put it in the terms of banking. If your way you bank is you put $5 into the account to buy a $15 phone credit. For big banks, it just doesn't work. It's not efficient for them. So they don't open there. Now, what happens if you live in the Bronx today? Well, you can't find a bank. It's very hard to find a bank. The bank opens at 10 and it closes at 4. Most of these people work before 6 a.m. and they come back home after 6 p.m. So they can't go to the bank even if the bank open. But there is not even a bank because it's not financial economic for the bank. And how do? You are locked out, completely locked out. But these are the same areas where on every corner you have a bodega shops, you have a kebab, you have a grocery store, and these stores are just there. The store owner knows the neighborhood, they know people. There are people that they have seen growing from their kids' age to becoming doctors, right? So giving the power to this store owner to become your financial agent through a agency banking software, which is WODI, it's a revolution because suddenly you don't need banks anymore. You can just go to the store to obtain a Visa cards. You can go to the store to open a bank account. You can go to the store to send money to your loved ones without paying 15 20% of fees, right? It's basically bringing the solution to people, meeting people where they are, using tools they can already use and they know, and respecting their intelligence. That's what WODI is about.
Yeah. Wow. So you provide essentially the technology layer so that any store operator can also create additional income for themselves in the process, but really create an opportunity where their community can come in there and use them as a bank. So they need to deposit cash, check, send that overseas, use that to open up a credit card, any of those things. You're enabling that with your tech infrastructure.
Yes, yes. And
Yep.
this is the same idea that I was describing from Africa, where every shop is a bank. The only difference is that in Africa, they're doing it informally. They don't have infrastructure systems in place. What we did at Wodi, we built that infrastructure that works at scales. And we didn't
Yep.
do it by ourselves in partnership with the world's largest fintech company, Visa. So, and now we solve this problem in every country. We just opened in Kenya. You mentioned Kenya. We are
Yep.
in the process of opening Nigeria. It was supposed to be done since last week. And we're already live in all 50 states in America.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, congrats on your progress. And I mean, I think it's so like to your point, it's like I still feel like in America we're still like over a decade behind, right? Like as an example, Kenya and like some of these more flexible, like human centric like money mechanisms, right? And in part of that is because like in the US, we also have these like entrenched financial institutions that out of greed, in some cases out of racism, in other cases out of just like protectionism, have built up some of these financial underlayers that actually make it hard for people to become banked, like credit scores, right? And actually, previous guest on this episode, Mercedes Bidart from Kipo Bank in Latin America, right, which is like using the actual behaviors of small banks to create credit scores so that previously uncredit scored individuals can get into the banking system. You have another way of helping people get into the banking system. What type of obstacles are, because I imagine there's a lot here in the US, like you have entrenched institutions, you have a way of working, like what obstacles are you encountering as you're scaling this model up?
Yeah, the obstacle is also universal because most countries in this world have copied the Western way of banking, and which comes with the same regulations. I think the biggest obstacle is doing this thing the right way. A lot of companies, I'm not here to name, to bring names out there, but a lot of companies still operate in the dark. They report billions of dollars in revenue, but they're not licensed to do it, meaning that they are not going by the rules. And there are many reasons why companies might do that. One of the reasons is because it takes 3 to 5 years. It doesn't matter how much money you have, it will take 3 to 5 years for you to get the regulatory coverage to operate legally. But for us, again, looking back in my roots, for us, that was non negotiable. That was a feature of the company. That being a feature of the company meant we have to live very thin until we get that regulatory coverage, even though the technology was ready 3 years ago, right? We just started onboarding the merchants in New York not too long ago, I think less than 2 months ago. So all this time we were kind of locked out. Another example is in this country of Senegal. We had millions of users, 2 million users. We were powering the house mortgage payment for millions of people in the country, retirement payments, and then the central bank changed the regulation overnight. Well, many companies continued to operate. We decided to put a full stop on the operations. So I think these are some of the biggest challenges that you
The,
would
the
face.
the regulatory aspect. So in the US, do you have that like have you overcome that
Yeah,
regulatory hurdle? Like you're registered as a
yeah.
institution now?
Yes, we do it in
Yeah.
multiple ways. We do it as with bank sponsors that give us coverage in the entire country,
Ah,
but
okay.
we also do it with strategic partnership with money transmitter license owners. Right? If, for example, in New York, it would cost $5 million to get a license and multiple years. There are different ways you could go by. One way is to have a bank, FDI insured bank, that would sponsor you to operate as under the license. So we we followed both ways because one thing I learned at Boeing is that you never want a single point of failure.
Ah, yeah, yes. Well, it seems like maybe they've forgotten that rule, but I guess this is not a podcast about Boeing at the moment. I can say that because I'm in Seattle and they're up the street from me. But yeah, I okay, fascinating. And this is like very random. Have you seen a documentary called Bank of Dave?
Not yet.
No, it's based in the UK, but it's like a small business owner that runs, I think, like a shipping company, and then starts to loan money to people, and he's seeing the power of those loans really creating economic development in this more rural part of the UK. So he sets out to actually create a bank, and he can't do it.
Oh,
He's stalled, and I won't give away the film, but anyway, I'm like, if anybody's fascinated about this, but it seems like that's not just this like UK documentary. That's everywhere. There's just sometimes arbitrary, sometimes from entrenched power positions or companies or lobbying efforts that are actually keeping innovation from happening in the financial sector. And there's both like a bottom up innovation in technology, but then you also had to go and actually create this like regulatory guidance and approvals as well to be able to meet those things together. Um, Ousmane, I'm just loving this conversation. There's so many ways we could go. This is unique. Building out the regulatory guidance, that is a long-term bet that you made years ago in order to do it. What gave you the confidence to say, hey, look, I know I got to overcome this regulatory hurdle. It's expensive. It's not even guaranteed, but next level breakthrough growth is going to happen if we get it. So what gave you the ability to like keep operating, like keep kind of growing this vision while waiting for that regulatory approval, and ultimately like bring us into the room? How did you get help to get that regulatory approval? How did you figure it out? How did you who helped you on that journey?
yeah. This is great question. Well, for us, we just couldn't operate in the dark. We're not here to make money. We're here to change lives, and we're here to stay for hundreds of years. We want to build a lasting impact, right? We're not just here to make quick money, set the company and exit. Matter of fact, we had an $18 million acquisition at Pay Cruiser, which we declined because of reasons like this. It's more about the purpose, right? And for you to do it with the right purpose in mind, you need to follow the rules that are in place. You need to play by the rules that are there. You can't just come and game the rules. That do a lot of bad things, even for entrepreneurs. Imagine two entrepreneurs. I and you are doing the same thing. You are gaming the system, and I am not. You see what that means. We don't want to be around. We don't want to be on that seat, right? So we rather go through the pain right now, knowing that once we complete that regulatory coverage, the solution will speak for itself. And we didn't do it by ourselves. One of our day one backers is Visa. And I really want to thank them for trusting us for day one. They run the largest fintech company in the world. They know this problem more than anybody else. So within
Yeah.
5 minutes of our first conversation, they knew what was going on. So they're supporting us a lot into this. They're connecting us with the right decision makers. When we block, they connect us with the right people to unblock us so that we keep the ball rolling at global scale. So that's one of the I think that was one of the biggest help we've received.
Yeah. So Visa, how do you get that type of support from Visa? I'm sure there are so many entrepreneurs that would love it. Like how did you end up? I would imagine that type of relationship took time to build, and probably a lot of conversations, a lot of proof points. How did you end up identifying them as a strategic partner? How did you end up getting in the room with key decision makers? How did you win them over to build this type of support?
Yes, they run the largest fintech in the world. They understand this problem more than anybody else. So it was kind of preaching to the choir when I first approached them. But many companies, as you well said, many companies will claim that they're solving this unbanked problem, right? According to Visa, it's about $2.7 trillion that you would add into the global economy each year, right? Many companies will claim that they do that, but very few companies will show you how to do it. So I think the anchor point for us was we've already built this. The only blocker was the regulatory piece. So in our first meeting, we showed them, instead of telling them, we showed them this is what it does, this is how it works. And they understood it inside out because they're involved in all the layers. So that's kind of how I got them into it. In
Wait, but
contrast,
I like if you don't mind, like, did you did you email them? Did you meet them at a conference? Like really in the like. I
yeah,
think that identification. Hey, they're a very strategic partner to us. I've got the proof points. They're probably inundated with requests. How did you stand out? How did you get in the room?
yeah, yeah. So in the pay cruiser days, they were very involved. Visa is still very involved in financial inclusion in Africa. It's a big market for them. It's one of the few companies that decided not to leave the African market and even invest more. I think recently they committed to $1 billion investment in Africa alone. So
Wow.
during my years at Pay Cruiser Africa, which was a different subsidiary there, I met with some of the key executives at Visa and we talked about strategic partnerships. The thing is, in Africa, things get very slow at some point. So when I decided to come back to the US and kind of look at things from the Western angle, I, I applied to a program called Visa Fintech Fast Track, right? It was just a cold outreach. The next day, I received a call from the manager of that program and that's kind of how the ball started rolling. So it's true, Visa helped us, but it's really the people behind, people that are there not for the money, but for really the purpose that want to make a difference. So they looked at what we said that we were doing, and they were very interested. In less than 24 hours,
Wow.
we had a meeting scheduled and then another meeting scheduled, and that's kind of how it went on. Strategic 5 year strategic partnership, resource cash, and many other things.
But by the time that happened, you had already identified the problem. You knew it was a problem, right? Unbanked people. You already had proof. You were operating, you had customers, you had proof of impact, you had all these things, right? And
Yeah.
and so okay, yeah. So I think it's actually really interesting. I had a call not for the podcast. I was providing guidance to another entrepreneur earlier on in the journey, and I hear this in so many of these calls, right? People are like, I just need the money to turn on the marketing engine. I just need this. And I was like, tell me about your customers. Tell me about your first users. What are they saying? And they're like, no, I need the marketing to get the customers. And I'm like, no, like stop development, stop fundraising, stop everything. Every effort from now is just talk to people using the platform. Product market fit solves all problems, right? So you had that when you were going into these meetings, you had already demonstrated impact, which leads us to a question. You had to go to people and say, I'm a startup, trust me with your money. So even the more important question than like how did you get Visa is like how did you get your first customers to trust you with money when you weren't regulated, you didn't have approval, you didn't have backing. Like how did you build that for such an important asset for folks?
Yeah, I think the first traction came out of the subsidiary we owned in Africa, and it's a hell on fire situation there, especially for businesses. They struggle to pay and get paid. You can imagine, Mark, your company, you probably have a lot of people and employees that rely on the salary each month. And you said yourself, it's a pain in the neck to move money. Now imagine you live in a Western, in this specific case was Senegal. You live there, you want to buy, you are a merchant, you want to buy your product in China or in Dubai. You have hundreds of thousands of dollars sitting on a mobile money account on your phone, but they're worthless on the other side because they don't even know what orange money is. What do you do? So Me coming with a solution like that was kind of music to the ears. But the most impact, I think the first client was enabling people to pay their rent. You cannot imagine before pay cruiser what it used to take for people to pay their rent. At least 8 hours. It's a long story. I don't know if we have time, but it was 8 hours for people to pay their mortgage. So what we did, we signed a partnership with the housing authority with an app from anywhere you are in the world, no matter what wallet you have, you can just pay, right? Because these wallets in those countries also don't talk to each other. You can
Yep.
have money in one wallet, but you can pay your rent. So we made it interoperable across the board. Instead of spending 8 hours to pay your rent in cash, you will just use your your phone and pay, and neither party needs to worry about how they
Yeah.
pay or get paid. They all get the money however they want to get the money
Yeah.
because it's an interoperable situation. So it was basically solving a hair on fire problem.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm laughing because I remember at one point we were working on a project, and we had to get something that was like just above our like ATM limit, but it was in a more rural area in America, and I just like couldn't, like the receiver would only receive it in cash, right? And I like had cash in my bank. I could move it to Venmo, I could PayPal, but like I couldn't get my cash. Anyway, I remember running around like a Yahoo trying to do it. And I like called the bank and they're like, yeah, come in and do it. And then like it got blocked for some reason because that bank was, anyway, it was this like laughable thing. But so anyway, so you spent time with these, so you saw the problem from like a theoretical perspective. In country, you spent time with people, and in there that you realize, out of like all the hair on fire moments, this biggest thing is rent. It happens every month. So I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna solve that problem. And then I saw the next problem, which is, hey, they're trying to buy things from overseas. Okay, now I'm gonna solve that problem. And then you've just kind of kept expanding that. And now you're saying, okay, and now by the way, this isn't just in Senegal. This isn't just in like in Nigeria. Like, by the way, this problem's even bigger in the US. And so like now we're solving it here. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And
Fascinating.
you
I
know
love this.
what you just described is what billions of people still go by every day,
Yeah.
especially businesses.
Yeah.
So you know
Yeah.
the pain that they're feeling.
Yeah. And I had it on like a one-off thing that like, it was like, we were fine, right? Like this is,
Yeah.
but if you're paying your rent, you're not fine if you can't have access to that cash, right? You have to do that. Or if you're in a place where your inability to pay back is accruing at 20 to 30% a month because of the way that some like finance structures are created if in more informal settings. Um, Fascinating. Okay, so let's go on the journey here. So you decide to move into the American market to expand this model. You build this partnership with Visa, but like somewhere in here, you're like, you know what? Entrepreneurship isn't hard enough. Let me also go get my PhD. Can we do like a quick aside here? Because you mentioned that earlier and I didn't pick up on it. It's like, so I'm like, I've been waiting for the moment to come back to this. Like Ousmane, what are you doing? The entrepreneurship is so challenging. Why are you also getting a PhD? And tell me about how did the PhD story come here, like come to be along this whole entrepreneurial journey for you?
Yes, yes. I get that question every day. Almost this morning, I got it too. And I think I just have to thank my mother for that. She was the best role model. Like I said, she used to work 16, 17 hours per day, 7 days a week. I've never seen her take a day of vacation. So it was kind of built in me, right, growing up. For me, it was the way of life. So when I hear 9 to 5, I think it's boring. I would be very, very bored in a 9 to 5 because I've seen people work from 5 to 9, 9 to 5, and then 5 to 9 every day without thinking about a break. And it's just part of my DNA now. So, yeah. And the thing with WODI, things got easier. We got more resource, more access. People understand more how things go. We have help. Moving World, Microsoft is helping too. Right? So we do have help. And I started with a team of one. right? Now I think we're about 25 plus, right? And obviously, if you're able to do this from a one man team to 25, you look around and say, okay, what am I going to do with my time?
Yeah.
Right? Now, now I'm already working on financial inclusion. I'm already doing research. I've already submitted a couple of patents in this field. Why not get the academic recognition for it? Which is what I'm doing in my PhD, but it's very closely related to the work at WODI. It's about financial identity in the global economy.
Hmm. Yeah, no, I think I mean, it's easy to see how that topic could parallel into the business model, and probably the insights from
Yeah.
your business are
Yeah.
paralleling right into there. Is So you kind of straddle these worlds of like entrepreneurship and academia. What for you has been the biggest learning as you've been growing the organization from you solo to now team of 25? What's been the biggest realization of what have you had to change as an individual, like within yourself, in order to keep this company growing, on the at the rate that you want it to keep growing at?
I think there are many, many ways I can answer that question. I think because the business that we're in seems like it's a business of moving money around, but in reality, the business we're in here is a business of moving trust around. And that's why the concept already makes so much sense because you trust the corner bakery. That's where you buy your food. That's where you buy your bread. That's where you talk about the stories on the village. So you already trust them. But now, how in a digital world, because the world is still a digital infrastructure, can you win the trust of people who don't even know about you? And that comes in the fact of you have to change yourself in a way that you want to always be able to put yourself in their shoes. And that's what I've done. Always put myself in the shoes of the client. If someone comes to me with a solution that would benefit my company versus my customer, I will not take that solution. I don't care. And that happened so many times. So that's why, it's like inside out, showing
Yeah.
that unshakable value, that unshakable way of, yeah, something that shows that your integrity is unshakable. I think for me, that's the biggest part.
Yeah. Is so I'm this is a topic that I love because it's also something that I'm thinking about as our organization's growing, right? When it's just you, notions of purpose and integrity, very easy. You just have to control yourself, right? When you get to 10 people, when you get to 20, 25, like now all of a sudden, like, have you taken any steps to like integrate those notions of like integrity and purpose and like long-term thinking in ways so that your employees are also really like living and breathing that same belief?
Yes, yes. And that dates back to how the challenges I had starting as an entrepreneur. I'm a very welcoming person. I naturally trust people. I naturally see the good in people. And along the way, I know that most people are after with are around you for with a hidden agenda. And so I made a lot of mistakes along the way. And I realized that the best way forward is when you, because as a fast growing company, you get to onboard people very quickly. You still want to keep that cadence going. And I realized the best way to do that is to set the contract, but not in the paper, which comes after, but the moral contract from the get go. You need to be in phase with those people that you bring in on board. They need to be in phase with you. And believe it or not, but the best way I was able to identify those people, you are actually one of them, is if they are willing to work with you without thinking about any money or financial return. Generally, those kind of people are the kind of people you always want to be around with because they already shown you they're invested in you. They're not invested in whatever they can get out of you. So that's the mindset I'm following as we're growing and making sure that everybody in the company is in phase with that mindset because that's the culture we want in the company. We want that
Yeah.
culture to be top down and bottom up.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that, right? And have you found, like, as you interview people, as you network with people, as you recruit people, what have you found as being a really effective way to screen for that, like, purpose alignment, cultural alignment?
Yeah. And that story I will keep that for forever. She's one of my best employees today, a former banker. And when we were interviewing her, she passed a lot of the checkpoints. And before we gave her the offer, I had a call. And that call was the scary meat call. Basically, in the call, I told her this is going to be the hardest job you probably have ever done. We are not going to pay you as well as your previous job. You're going probably to have to work nights and weekend. I know you have a kid, but you're probably gonna have to work nights and weekend. It's gonna be very difficult. Are you sure you want to do this? Because if you're in for the money, it's not worth it. When a person tells you yes, I'm in, regardless of who that person is, they're basically signing on that credo per se. That's kind of one of my way. And maybe I could make mistakes along the way, but so far since I started that strategy, it has not failed me. So people that come on board, they have to understand they're not coming on board for the money, but they also have to understand if we end up making money in this business, they have 100% assurance that I got their back. So that's kind of how it works. And once we agree on that morally, then we can go through the contracting agreement where we repeat what we agreed on.
Yep, I love that, the scare you away call as the an important step in the hiring process. I mean, it resonates. Like, I think especially in our earlier years, I think some of the things that we had to invent as well in that hiring process, right, to ensure alignment, to also be able to talk about, like, financially, like, hey, we can't pay you as much, but here are the things that we've put in place so you at least see that, like, you're being paid less, but equally to everybody else at the team. It's like, I think, entrepreneurs in these early stages, when, if you don't have this big, VC backing, you know, uh, 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 pathway of growth, right? You have to be a little bit more creative in how you are using and deploying your capital and finding people that are aligned with you in order to move that forward. Um, Usman, I feel like we're getting close to time here, and
Yeah.
I feel like we've just gotten started. uh, so maybe just on that last thread, I'd love to talk just a little bit more before we get to, like, our kind of our impact round, where I get to throw some fast questions at you. But I'd like to talk about how you're financing your own growth, because I think that's also not totally tradition as well. Like, you haven't just pursued, like, sandhill venture capitalists, right? Even though you have the credentials, right? You've built companies, right? Your own academic, your own business successes. Tell me a little bit more about why you've decided to finance your business the way that you have, and what you've learned in the process.
Yeah, so I think it's more about my technical background. I'm a founder builder, so that's one of the advantage. I think it's one of the competitive advantage I have. I'm a founder builder, meaning that if I think of a solution, and on the business terms, it makes sense. Now, to implement that solution and bring it to life, I know how to do it. I have a background in AI. We are an AI company, thousands of AI agents for different things, from legal to business to finance to technology. So, in a sense, we are able to make things happen without relying on VC money. Why people are raising money? To realize the dream, right? They have this idea in their head and they don't have the power to do it. They need VC money to help them to hire people or the people expert in the fields to do it or resources to do it, right? So, in my case, a lot of things we are able to do it in house because of that technical background as a technology company. But we also looked at corporate partnership and corporate venture. We go to corporations with solutions that address a hair and fire situation for them. Win-win solution. We don't ask them money up front. As we prove that we can deliver, then they pay us. So for instance, right now we're raising $10 million. We already have completed $8.7 million without drawing money from VCs, right? So
Yeah.
that's kind of how we were able to grow. And I'm telling you, once you get to did, I hope every founder can do that because you get to choose who's on your cap table. There are sovereign nations, very well-funded nations, VC firms, nation-backed VC firms that proposed to give us money, and we told them no because they did not align to our purpose. Because we know that with or without them, we are going to meet the purpose. Maybe it might take longer, but money is not the blocker here.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah, I love having that clarity of purpose so that when you do get like, right, because if you don't have that clarity of purpose and then a sovereign nation, a big VC, they come and dangle that check, it's like very hard to to say no
To
to
say
that, right?
no.
But if you're locked in with that purpose, right, then it's easier. You can hold that up against, hey, does this align here? And if they're in disconnect. But that also takes a lot of, I think, individual like mental fortitude and confidence in direction as well. So Ousmane, in what you just said, you made a statement about finding a hair on fire problem and then a win-win solution. And I think that's really, I want to like double click on that and actually shine a lot of attention to it because like that sounds great. Oh yeah, like if you find the problem that's big enough, like people not being able to pay their rent or Visa, whatever their hair on fire problem is that has them partnered with you. That sounds great, but actually like how do you find that problem? Like is there a mental model? Is there a framework? Like what did you do to get to know these institutions that enabled you to really discover not just things that they were saying that this was a problem, but you actually saw that this is like people are losing sleep over this, right? And now that's the thing I'm going to go in there and solve. How did you figure out the hair on fire problem for these stakeholders?
Yes, I think that should be a consequence of your initial purpose, which is to solve hellfire problems for people. I think we should always kind of have people in the central part of this. And then the right corporation that has a hell on fire problem that aligns with that comes naturally. Right now, I mean, where else can you overnight have millions of people without bank accounts, people that don't have a Visa cards or credit card? Just think about it. Imagine you have Visa today, right? You
Yeah.
still need to grow your network. Well, I mean, the market is already taken, it's already saturated across the board, right? But then there's this invisible economy where there are people who never heard about a Visa card.
Yeah.
My wife, she, she, she just recently had a Visa card. Right? So, that's a new person that you bring into the global market. So it's a hell on fire problem for the global market. But we didn't start by that. We start by solving the problem for the people. And then we are like, oh, this corporation needs to grow. Well, how are they going to do it? Well, this is the perfect solution for them. Let us talk to them, right? And we have so many different hell on fire like that for corporations. We have similar for Stripe, for Square, for PayPal. The line goes on. I mean, hundreds of companies like WODI would not solve this problem over now. We know that, right? But we are just strategic on which part of the problem we want to solve, and then we go from there.
Wow, fascinating. I yeah, I mean, I there's something that you've just kind of said, like in multiple stages on your entrepreneurial journey, even it sounds like when you were working like at Boeing or others, it's like this ability to just like really simply synthesize, like, this is the problem that we're solving for. And what I love about what you've said is that it's like, but at the end of the day, it's not just like a business unit or like a profit and loss statement. It's like for a human that's actually dealing with a thing, right? And then if we can solve that problem, right, then we know they'll utilize the thing. And if they can utilize the thing, then they're going to enter into this system where then their capital is now a more productive part of the economy, and they're able to also leverage and access other things like more favorable loan terms, easier payments, easier access to supplies, and more. I can I try a question with you that's like a little experimental? Maybe we'll take this
No
one out.
problem.
I don't know.
Of course.
So this is something that personally, like, I battle with too, right? Is like on one side, I see, corporations like profitability at all costs, like eating small organizations, right? And and yet we also like partner with corporations, right? Because they're like obviously fulfilling needs that millions and billions of people have. And when it comes to finance, obviously Visa has a vested interest here in you being successful, so they can get more people on Visa cards, right? And like, how does Visa make money if people are on Visa cards? Like transaction fees, right? And then people carrying some debt on cards, right? Or at least that the banking institutions on top of them do. Do you ever carry any? Does this ever keep you up at night that I'm like, hey, yes, I'm banking people and that's positive, but I'm banking them into an economy that's also like an approaching and has some like real downsides, right? It puts people in debt. It puts more money into the hands of like fewer, richer people and corporations. Is that something that you think about? Like, do you navigate that? And if so, like, how do you work through that?
Yeah, I navigate that, and that's part of our moral compass as well, and that's the whole integrity part. It's a big deal, You have to. There are companies that you know approached us, and we took right from the back, big companies, I'm top three. We told them we can't work with you for that reason, and it's just that moral compass part. To At the end of the day, like I said, a billionaire will not die, will not go to heaven with his money. So what's the point to amass billions of dollars by hurting people? I personally, I don't see a point in doing that, right? And I understand the corporation, the purpose. I mean, I've graduate education. The purpose of a business, of a corporation, is to make money for its shareholders. But I think you mentioned in one of your post article, there is a bigger purpose than making money for the shareholders, right? Changing people's life is a bigger purpose than making money for shareholders. And you're gonna have to balance out, right? There is not a perfect company out there which is not making money for the shareholders. At WODI, we know that our shareholders are going to make money, but we selectively work with those that are not doing this for the money. Money is a consequence, not a goal. That's kind of how we approach it.
Yeah, and the amount of money, right? Because some VCs will say like go big or bust, right? Like, and
Yes, yeah, yeah,
right, and you're
yeah.
saying, you found partners that are saying, hey, that type of growth might not happen at this point in time in the journey. We don't need that. We just need to see.
Yes.
Yep. Okay,
Yeah.
fascinating. Yeah. I think it's like a really interesting piece where I've seen most entrepreneurs that I'm close to like kind of go through these stages at some point of time of like, I'm solving this right now problem, but I'm also like moving people into an economy that has these like bigger problems, right? And so like what is my role in doing that, and where am I really part of the solution, and where might I be maybe helping individuals but also exacerbating like bigger systemic issues, right? And I think it's like it's weight that we carry as social entrepreneurs and purpose driven entrepreneurs, right? That's like it'd be much simpler if we were just after money, because then it's just like if we all get rich, fine, right? But actually carrying the weight is important, and so it's cool to hear you come back to like, well, your integrity and who you are bringing into the conversations with you, and who is actually joining your cap table or becoming a strategic partner as being key to that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think I wanted to add one thing, if I may.
Please,
Is
please.
For example, today the average rate to move money it's around 5 to 7%. In most cases, it's 15% when you add the
Wow.
interchange rate and the spread, the foreign exchange spread that they don't tell you about. So I'm not going to mention name, but you might go to a yellow label company and send money. They tell you it's free, but in reality, you're paying 15%, right? Because you would pay some money, the recipient would pay a lot of money, and no, you don't know what's happening in between.
Yeah.
And when we started, we said, okay, from 50% to 2% fees, right? That's already good down. It's a lot of money that goes back into the consumer's pocket that they can direct to other things. But we looked at the balance sheet and we said we can do even more. Now we are releasing the new versions of WODI is $1 per transaction, regardless of the amount, right?
Wow.
Merchants are astonished when we tell them. They ask us why the competitor charge at least $5, and then another 5 to 7%. Why only $1? Just that is the purpose. We can make money by just charging people $1. Why should we go and charge them 15%? There's no point. So these are the
Yeah.
kind of decisions we talk about in our board meetings all the time.
Yeah. Well, then I think you build so much trust in the long run, which you made that comment earlier, right? The financial system actually operates on trust, right? And so you're finding different ways to build trust with those that are not part of the formal banking system, and certainly low fees are key to that. Yeah. This is fascinating. Ousmane, we it is time for us to go to our impact round. So shorter questions, shorter answers. I'm going to rapid fire them at you. Are you ready?
Yes.
Yeah. Alrighty. Okay. What is a mistake that you have made that you really hope future entrepreneurs will not make?
Yes, you have to do your due diligence against the people that you bring on board, especially in the early days, and against people whom you take money from. Very, very important. There are so many entrepreneurs that end up in the wrong path just because they didn't do their due diligence or they wanted to kind of ease the pain to take
Yeah.
easy money. No, no, that's the one thing you should never do.
No such thing as easy money unless you're banking with WODI. But
Maybe.
okay, tell me what is, as you have been raising from like impact investors and private sector organizations, what is one thing that you wish all impact investors would know and consider more as they're considering investing?
Yes, I mean even within the impact investor community, the way and I learned that by learning how VCs work, investors. They rely to PEs and they have to report. They are a business. It's basically a business of loaning money, and some of them most recently, and that was one of the biggest pain point for me. Some of them at some point get a lot of pressure from the PEs, and they have to make some sacrifices. But as an impact investor, you should never do that because your mission and purpose is to change people's lives, right? So if your PEs are coming back to you while you're not generating more money, you have to explain to them and be categorical on the mission and the vision why these PEs came to you in the first place. I hope more impact investor will be stern on that mission because I see a lot of deviations and it hurts when you do that, right? You see that this impact investor is now deviating the other way. It hurts a lot.
Yeah, but I think actually being more clear with investors up front of like, what is your impact thesis, right? How are you
Yes,
holding
yeah,
yourself accountable to
yeah,
that? Like,
yeah,
what are the
yeah.
measures? And I've actually seen that question come out from other kind of entrepreneurs that I've talked to. It's like when they start talking to impact investors, one of the first things they're like, show me an actual, like, what is the email? What is the report that you are giving to the investors in your fund, to your LPs, your limited partners, your investors, whoever that are like, what are you showcasing? And if there isn't that impact story as part of it, it really kind of sets off some flags. So okay.
Very
um
good one. Very good one.
yeah. Okay, what is a leadership or management skill that you wish you could turn on or embody more that you think would make you more effective at leading your team?
I think there is no such thing as more empathy. You can always have more, and Every day I try to work towards that. Find ways for me to be empathic. It changed everything in your life, personal, business, at the restaurant, at the cafe, in the bus. It just changed everything.
Yeah.
And I wish I can get even more and more of that.
Mm. I remember listening to a talk from Satya Nadella, the Microsoft CEO, and he talks about I believe his son, who very sadly I think somewhat recently passed away, was born with cerebral palsy, and the gift that Satya talked about is that like having his son born with that and watching his wife care for that child created this like view of empathy in a way that he had just never experienced, and it changed him, and that power of that empathy in the workplace he credits with a lot of his professional success. So I'm curious for you, like what do you do to nurture empathy? Like how do you how do you become more empathic yourself?
Always look at things from the perspective of the other person and always give them the benefit of the doubt. But now I'm a bit more cautious. I do it with an aware mindset that not everybody is genuine. So always give them the benefit of the doubt and look at things from their perspective. Sometimes someone can come to you with BS. You know it's BS. They think they're gaming you. You know they think they're gaming you. You could just stop the BS. But if you put yourself in their shoes, try to understand where they're coming from. It all makes sense. And sometimes you even want to help them more because you realize what they're doing. So that's kind of just, I think
Love
that's
that.
one technique I'm using a lot these
Yeah.
days.
Yeah. And I imagine the mindfulness exercises help, just the ability to be able to like breathe in those moments. And yeah.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Yep. Cool. We kind of talked about this earlier, but I'd love to ask it again. What is a quote, ritual, or activity that you turn to for strength when things get super hard?
Yeah, I do a lot of meditation. I'm Muslim by nature, and the fact that I pray 5 times a day helps me a lot because it's 5 occasions where I can reconnect, and kind of reevaluate myself. Being able to do that 5 times a day, it's as an obligation, right? It's a big
Yeah.
deal, right? Some people get to do it once in the morning or every Sunday, but I get to do it every day of the week 5 times. So it helps me tremendously. I mean, I'm not trying to push people into a religion or not, but the fact that I have this opportunity to evaluate myself 5 times a day is priceless for me, and it helps me with
Yeah.
everything else.
Yeah. Wow. I love that. Yeah. And well, I love that you said I get to, right? It's not like I have to. It's like you're like this is a gift that you have. Very, very cool. Um, Usman, who is one entrepreneur that you admire that you think we should interview on the show next?
I haven't thought about that question. One entrepreneur that I admire, most of the entrepreneurs that I admire, I think the CEO of Airbnb, Brian, I think it's Brian Chesky.
Yeah.
But if you could, he has a lot more stories than me. And also Warren Buffett. They're not at my stage. They are way
Yeah.
above my stage, right? But these are people that they are mentor of mine, even though they don't know it. But let me think
Mm,
about one entrepreneur who would even benefit a bit more from the
yeah.
show. Maybe I have to get back to
You
you
follow
on
up on
that
me.
because I was looking up,
Yeah.
right? I need to find someone who has that power, energy, vision, and drive that you can invite to the show. I will follow up on that.
I love that. I would love that. We'll take any recommendations at any point in time. Usman, this has been an absolute pleasure and privilege speaking with you. I have a feeling I'm gonna follow up with you again for like a follow up episode. Maybe in 6 months, maybe 12 months. We haven't quite figured out our follow up rhythm, but I would love to just kind of see the ongoing evolution. I think what you've built so far is really incredible. I think what you're building is really incredible, and as we talked about, the ability to pull in billions of people into the banking system, to be able to leverage capital to make their own lives easier and less stressful, it fits into the theme of the show of how to help a few billion people. So thank you for the work that you do. It's really an honor, and I'm grateful you spent time with us today.
Thank you so much, Mark, and thank you for what you're doing. You are changing people's lives every day. So please keep doing this because it means a lot to a lot of people, a lot of entrepreneurs like me.